The rain fell gently upon the expansive green fields of Greenwood Cemetery in Brooklyn, New York, a location where silence held the depth of innumerable untold tales. David Whitman, a man in his late 50s, emerged from his sleek black sedan, the sound of his polished shoes crunching against the damp gravel echoing as he approached a familiar gravestone. Every year, on this precise date, October 12th, he returned to pay tribute to the memory of the one woman who had captured his heart completely. His hands, firm yet weathered by the years, cradled a bouquet of white lilies, Elena's cherished choice. Each trip to this grave served as a poignant reminder of his losses, of the choices that had molded his life into the solitary reality it now was. David was a figure of influence and affluence, a real estate mogul who had constructed an empire from the very foundations. His name resonated throughout New York City, gracing headlines, business publications, and towering billboards that showcased his latest luxury apartment ventures. He possessed all that one could wish for: wealth, power, and a way of life that others looked upon with longing. In these serene moments at the cemetery, everything else faded away. In this moment, he was stripped of his ruthless facade, devoid of the calculating mind of an investor. Instead, he stood as a grieving man, one who had once cherished a love so profound that not even the passage of time could diminish its essence. Elena was the sole gentle light in his toughened existence. Decades ago, they crossed paths when he was a young man striving to carve out his place in Manhattan. She had toiled at a quaint art gallery in Soho, her gaze perpetually brimming with aspirations and her heart ever poised to embrace affection. In contrast to David, who was consumed by his relentless pursuit of ambition, Elena cherished the small, exquisite moments that infused life with true significance. She would pull him to parks, insist on long strolls across the Brooklyn Bridge, and remind him that existence encompassed more than mere figures and transactions. She was his guiding star, his anchor, until the moment she disappeared from his world without a word. David had been on a quest to find her. He had exhausted every connection, every resource, yet Elena had vanished like a fleeting whisper on the breeze. For years, he pondered the reasons behind her departure, questioning if his actions had driven her away. The inquiries had followed him, lingering like specters in the shadows of his thoughts. It was 5 years ago that he discovered her, in this very cemetery. Not in life, but in death. He arrived too late, discovering that she had succumbed to an illness, leaving behind a void of explanation and closure. Merely a name carved into a headstone. He knelt before her grave, the rain drenching his coat as he laid the lilies softly on the earth. "It has been 5 years, Elena," he murmured, his voice a soft whisper amidst the gentle rustle of the leaves, "and I still find myself without the answers." His fingers glided over the frigid stone, the inscription of her name resonating like a scar that would remain forever unhealed. He shut his eyes, allowing the memories to wash over him. Her laughter, her fragrance, the way she had filled his world with warmth. A swift motion in the far-off landscape drew his gaze. He had company. A young man, likely in his early 20s, stood a short distance away, his hands buried deep in the pockets of his weathered leather jacket. His dark hair curled gently at the edges, framing a lean figure that spoke of struggle rather than ease. His expression was inscrutable, a blend of sorrow and uncertainty, as he gazed at the same grave before which David was kneeling. David scowled. He had never witnessed another soul pay their respects at Elena's grave. He believed she was all alone, with no family remaining to recall her existence. Yet this young man, he was not merely an observer. His gaze upon the grave held a profound intimacy, a connection that felt intensely personal. David gradually stood up, his keen gaze examining the unfamiliar figure. "Were you acquainted with her?" he inquired, his tone unwavering yet brimming with intrigue. The young man paused, fidgeting slightly as if weighing his choice to respond. After a lengthy silence, he finally uttered a few words, his voice gravelly yet imbued with an odd sense of recognition. "She was my mother." David's heart came to a sudden halt. For a fleeting instant, the surroundings dissolved into a mist, the rain, the trees, the gravestones, all merging into a soft obscurity. He gazed at the boy, seeking any indication that this wasn't merely a cruel jest of fate. "Could you repeat that?" His voice floated softly, almost lost in the air. The young man let out a sharp breath, running his fingers through his wet hair. Elena Whitman was my mother, he reiterated, his eyes fixed intently on David's. If what she shared with me holds any truth, then you are indeed my father. David sensed a tremor beneath him, as though the very earth had split apart. The words surged around him like a powerful tide, obliterating every belief he had ever clung to. He was blessed with a son, a child he was unaware of, a son that Elena had hidden from him all these years. His breath came in shallow gasps, his mind racing with a multitude of questions, yet only one managed to slip past his lips. Why didn't she share that with me? The young man, his son, offered a wry smile, one that carried the weight of unspoken sorrow. Text, I suppose that's a puzzle you'll need to solve, he remarked. Without uttering another word, he turned and walked away, vanishing into the misty rain, leaving David standing alone before Elena's grave, feeling more lost than he had ever felt in his life. Before we proceed, kindly subscribe to our channel and don't forget to like and share it with your friends. David remained motionless, the patter of the rain becoming a faint echo in the background. The young man's words lingered in his thoughts, each syllable slicing through him like a sharp blade. She was my mother. You are my father. He struggled to comprehend the truth of it, yet it seemed elusive, like a dream fading away just beyond his reach. Before him stood his son, his own flesh and blood, and yet he chose to turn away. His legs wobbled beneath him as he extended a shaking hand, seeking solace on Elena's gravestone. What was the reason for her secrecy with him? Why had she allowed him to go on for all these years, convinced that she had vanished without explanation? His breath was quick and uneven as he pivoted, searching the cemetery for any trace of the young man. Yet he had vanished, swallowed by the shadows of the trees and the gray mist that enveloped Brooklyn. After a long time, David experienced an emotion he had long suppressed, panic. He had dedicated his existence to mastering every detail of his surroundings, making certain that nothing ever took him by surprise. Yet here he stood in the rain, utterly powerless. He needed to track him down. He couldn't simply allow him to vanish. He sought clarity. With swift strides, he hurried to the cemetery's entrance, his gaze flitting from side to side, seeking any trace of the boy. Upon reaching the main road, his heart raced at the sight of a solitary figure trudging away, shoulders drawn tight against the chill. Without a moment's hesitation, David's voice pierced the tranquil evening air. Hold on. The young man halted his steps, yet he refrained from looking back. David inhaled deeply, his heart pounding as he approached her. Upon reaching him, he paused, uncertain of the words to express. Kindly, stay with me. I simply need to grasp the situation. The young man pivoted deliberately, his deep-set eyes a mystery. As David drew nearer, he noticed a subtle likeness, a hint in the contour of the jaw, the intensity of the gaze. It disturbed him in a manner he had not anticipated. The boy, however, appeared unfazed. Comprehend what? His voice held a subtle bitterness. That you were completely unaware of my presence? That my mother single-handedly nurtured me while you were busy constructing your empire? David recoiled. He had always taken pride in confronting reality directly, yet this was a reality he was unprepared to encounter. I promise you, I had no clue, he said, his voice trembling with feeling. She kept it to herself. He scanned the boy's expression for any hint of belief, yet all he found was a veil of cautious doubt. May I ask what your name is? David inquired, coming to the unsettling realization that he was unaware of even the simplest details regarding his own son. Stop. With a hint of hesitation, the boy replied, Nathan. Nathan. The name resonated with an uncanny familiarity, as though it had lingered in a concealed corner of his spirit throughout the years. David forced down the knot that had formed in his throat. Nathan. I'm puzzled as to why Elena chose not to share that with me. I'm uncertain about her reasons for keeping you away from me, but I must find out. Kindly share some details about her. Nathan emitted a humorless chuckle, shaking his head in disbelief. Are you asking me to share details about her? He inquired with a sense of resentment. Where were you during her time of illness? During her battle to cover the rent? When she put in those long hours, tirelessly striving to keep us going? Can you imagine the countless nights she spent in tears, questioning whether her choice was the right one? David experienced a gut-wrenching sensation, as though he had been struck hard in the abdomen. For years, he had grieved for Elena, convinced she had made the choice to abandon him, never realizing the depth of her suffering. The idea of her battling through hardships while he resided in luxurious penthouses and inked multi-million-dollar contracts churned his stomach with unease. "I didn't know," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. "If I had, I would have." Nathan interrupted him. "What would you have? Arrived like a savior and resolved all issues with your wealth?" His eyes blazed with fury. "That's where we diverge. You believe that wealth can fix all problems. However, she had no use for your money. She required your presence. You simply weren't present." David sensed the heaviness of those words sink profoundly into his heart. He stood exposed, lacking any rationale or excuse. He faced the stark truth that he had let Elena down without even realizing it. "You're right," he conceded, his voice raspy. "I was not present, and I am unable to alter that. However, I desire to understand you, Nathan. If there's even the slightest opportunity to set things straight, I will seize it." Nathan fixed his gaze on him, contemplating for what felt like an eternity, weighing the truth of his words. With a heavy sigh, he turned his gaze elsewhere. "It's too late," he whispered. "She has departed, and you are merely an unfamiliar face." He pivoted and strolled off, vanishing into the city's infinite avenues. David remained still, his gaze fixed on his son as he disappeared into the darkness, a profound sense of disorientation enveloping him like never before. David reclined in his penthouse on Fifth Avenue, gazing at the city lights that sprawled endlessly beyond the expansive floor-to-ceiling windows. New York had always been his realm, a space where he flourished, where each transaction, every towering structure, and every monetary victory had become yet another accolade in his array of achievements. Yet this evening, the city exuded a chill, an air of strangeness. His reflection in the glass appeared as that of an unfamiliar figure, a man possessing everything yet feeling utterly devoid of meaning. Nathan's words reverberated in his thoughts, each one slicing deeper than the previous. "She had no use for your money. She required your presence." For years, he clung to the belief that Elena had left him behind, unaware that she was quietly nurturing their son, enduring hardships he could never fathom. The image of her toiling through double shifts, barely scraping by on rent while he focused on his grand ambitions, churned his stomach with unease. How could he have been unaware? How had he never sensed in his very being that a piece of him had existed out there, maturing without his presence? His thoughts surged back to the cemetery, to that pivotal moment when he laid eyes on Nathan for the very first time. He was certain without the need for a DNA test to validate it. It was evident in the boy's gaze, reflected in the defined contours of his features. Without a doubt, he was the son of David. And yet, Nathan had turned his back, departing and leaving David with an abundance of questions, but no answers in sight. He refused to allow it to conclude in such a manner. He had dedicated his existence to orchestrating results, making certain that events unfolded according to his desires. He needed to locate Nathan once more. He needed to grasp the situation. As he extended his hand for the phone, he punched in the digits of the one individual he was certain could provide assistance. Robert Vega, a private investigator whom he had relied on before. In just a few moments, Robert responded, his tone steady and composed. "Mr. Whitman, how may I assist you today?" David paused briefly before he began to speak. "I'm looking for assistance in locating an individual. A young man by the name of Nathan. I lack a surname. All I can say is that his mother was Elena Whitman." A moment of silence lingered before Robert's voice broke through once more. "I'll explore my options." The following day, David immersed himself in his tasks, seeking to divert his mind from the turmoil brewing within. Gatherings, agreements, monetary statements. Everything had lost its former significance. After years of achievement, the burden of his success now seemed empty. He dedicated his life to amassing riches, but to what end? What was the purpose when the one thing that genuinely counted had eluded his grasp? As the evening settled in, his phone vibrated with a notification. It was Robert. The investigator stated matter-of-factly, "I found him. Nathan Whitman, at the age of 23, resides in a cozy apartment in Queens, close to the serene Astoria Park, employed at a garage located on Steinway Street." David let out a breath, his fingers clutching the edge of his desk. "Please provide me with the address." Later that night, he sat in his car, the dim light of the street lamp casting shadows on the weathered facade of a dilapidated apartment building in Queens. It was a stark contrast to the opulence of Manhattan, a setting he had never envisioned for his child's upbringing. The stairs bore the weight of rust, while the walls shed their paint like old memories fading away. He paused, lingering in the confines of his car, the rhythm of his heartbeat echoing in his ears. He had navigated billion-dollar deals and confronted ruthless competitors, yet as he stood before this door, preparing to face his own son, a wave of anxiety washed over him like never before. He rapped twice. The door creaked open a fraction, unveiling Nathan's cautious expression. Upon catching sight of David, his demeanor shifted to one of steely resolve. "What on earth are you doing here?" he asked, his voice laced with urgency. David inhaled deeply. "I simply wish to engage in conversation." Nathan let out a derisive laugh, shaking his head in disbelief. "You certainly have a tenacious spirit, don't you?" David conceded. "Not when something is significant." For an extended pause, Nathan remained still. With a heavy sigh, he stepped aside, permitting David to enter. The apartment exuded a sense of intimacy, filled with an array of mismatched furniture and walls adorned with a tapestry of sketches and blueprints, each telling a story of creativity and inspiration. David's gaze shifted toward them, acknowledging the intricate mechanical designs. He inquired if you were an engineer. Nathan gave a nonchalant shrug. "Striving to become." Engaging in part-time studies at City College of New York. Putting in hours at the garage to cover the costs. David experienced yet another wave of remorse. While David had more money than he could ever spend, his son was diligently working to support himself through school. He cleared his throat, preparing to speak. "I didn't arrive with the intention of critiquing your existence." He paused, searching for the perfect words to express himself. "I simply seek clarity." "Why didn't she share that with me?" Nathan folded his arms, resting against the counter with a casual air. "She refused to be seen as your charity case. She understood that you had your realm, your responsibilities. She was reluctant to involve you in something that wasn't your decision." David felt a constriction in his chest. "Yet, I would have made a different choice," he murmured, his voice scarcely audible. "I would have been present." Nathan emitted a humorless chuckle. "Could you? Or would you have pinned a check and carried on?" David tightened his jaw, a silent storm brewing within him. He had never experienced such a profound sense of helplessness before. "The past is something I cannot alter, Nathan. Yet, I can exist in this moment. If you would allow me to." Nathan observed him intently, his face a mask of mystery. With a heavy sigh, he averted his gaze. "I'm not sure I can trust you," he confessed. "However, I suppose time will tell." David experienced a glimmer of optimism. It was not about forgiveness. It was not about acceptance. Yet, it marked the beginning. Universe. The stillness enveloped them, heavy with the burden of the years that had slipped away. David felt an urge to speak, to utter something that might shatter the silence enveloping them, yet he struggled with the art of conveying his feelings. Corporate discussions and strategic dialogues. Those were his notable qualities. However, this was uncharted ground. Nathan, in contrast, appeared defensive, his arms folded tightly as he leaned against the counter. His keen gaze scrutinized David, as if assessing his trustworthiness. David observed the sketches adorning the walls, detailed mechanical designs, blueprints, and engineering drafts. These were not mere random sketches. They were meticulous, exacting, brimming with computations. He gestured toward one of them. "Did you create this?" he inquired with genuine curiosity. Nathan paused, contemplating, before finally giving a nod. "Indeed. This is for a project I've been developing at school." David moved in closer, scrutinizing the sketch with keen interest. "This is remarkable. Your skills are truly impressive." Nathan let out a derisive laugh. "Appreciate it, but skill alone won't cover the costs of education." David experienced yet another wave of remorse. While he enjoyed a life of luxury, his son faced the daunting challenge of funding his own college education, all the while remaining oblivious to his father's existence. He wished to contribute to the solution, yet he understood that merely throwing money at the issue wouldn't alter what had already transpired. "What is your objective?" David inquired, his tone measured and deliberate. "What are your plans following graduation?" Nathan regarded him thoughtfully for a moment before responding. "I aspire to delve into automotive engineering, focusing on the design of more efficient engines, with the hope of launching my own company in the future." David nodded, a peculiar sense of pride swelling within him. "That's a well-crafted plan. Have you considered internships?" "Links." Nathan emitted a humorless chuckle. "Are there any connections?" "Finding time to study amidst my work shifts is quite a challenge. Opportunities aren't exactly knocking at my door." David paused, uncertainty flickering in his mind. He wished to extend a hand, yet he was cautious not to intrude. "If you ever seek direction, I have connections in the field. I can certainly reach out to a few people." Nathan's demeanor shifted to one of shadow and intensity. I can stand on my own 2 feet. It's not a gift, David asserted with conviction. It's assistance. The kind that a father ought to bestow upon his son. Nathan recoiled at the mention of father, and David instantly wished he had held his tongue a moment longer. He understood that trust was not a foundation that could be laid in a single night. Listen, I'm not trying to intrude on your life, David went on, but I've already wasted so much time. I refuse to squander any opportunity that remains for me. Nathan let out a weary sigh, his hand brushing over his face in a moment of exasperation. It's more complex than that. David acknowledged this. Perhaps we could begin with something modest. A culinary experience. A dialogue. No expectations, simply discovering one another. Nathan took his time, pondering deeply before he eventually nodded in agreement. All right. A single meal. That's all there is to it. A wave of relief washed over David. It may have been modest, but it marked the beginning. The following evening, they gathered at a quaint diner close to Nathan's apartment. It was a stark contrast to the upscale venues David frequented, where the staff recognized him and champagne was always in abundance. As they sat facing one another, David came to the understanding that this setting was perfect for Nathan. It was genuine, straightforward, just like him. They placed their food orders, and for a moment, an enveloping silence settled between them. Then gradually, Nathan began to share, not delving into anything too intimate, but rather discussing his work, his studies, and the subjects that ignited his enthusiasm. David tuned in, taking in each word with keen attention. It was their inaugural genuine exchange, and for the first time, David sensed a flicker of optimism that perhaps, just perhaps, he could carve out a space in Nathan's world. Upon completing their meal, David delved into his pocket and retrieved a business card. I truly meant what I said about assisting you, he remarked, pushing it across the table. Take your time. If you ever find yourself in need of guidance or a chance, feel free to reach out to me directly. Nathan paused, a moment of uncertainty hanging in the air, before he took the card and quietly tucked it into his wallet. It may not have been a promise, yet it held significance. As they stepped outside, the cool night air enveloped them. Nathan buried his hands deep into his pockets. This doesn't change a thing, he muttered. However, I appreciate the dinner. David gave a slight nod. Progress unfolds gradually. Nathan regarded him intently for a prolonged moment before offering a subtle nod. Without uttering another word, he turned and strode away. David observed his departure, a blend of feelings churning within him. He was uncertain of the destination this path would take him, yet for the first time in ages, he sensed a spark of purpose igniting within him, something truly worth striving for. Before we proceed, kindly subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to like and share it with your friends. David had always been a person who took initiative. Throughout his life, he made choices with a confidence that stemmed from a wealth of experience. He had grown used to wielding authority, to anticipating the unfolding events. Yet, in this fresh phase of his journey alongside Nathan, he sensed he was steering through unknown seas. Weeks had passed since their dinner at the diner, and although their conversations had dwindled, David felt an undeniable shift in the air, as if something was gradually transforming between them. Nathan had not reached out, yet he had not excluded David from his thoughts either. The stillness that enveloped them had transformed, now resembling a peaceful agreement that they both respected. It was a delicate truce, yet it was a truce all the same. David had exerted every effort to nurture their bond while ensuring Nathan felt comfortable and unpressured. He sent a handful of text messages, casually checking in from time to time, never applying too much pressure. Occasionally, Nathan would reply. The communications were succinct yet courteous. Conversations focused solely on the present, revolving around school and work, devoid of any suggestion of a more profound bond. Yet David held tightly to those subtle indications. He understood that patience would be required. He needed to demonstrate to Nathan that he was not merely another affluent individual attempting to purchase a place in his world. Nathan had explicitly stated in their initial conversation that he had no interest in charity, and David acknowledged and respected that stance. He had no intention of purchasing Nathan's fondness. He simply sought an opportunity to prove himself. On a Saturday afternoon, Nathan finally made contact. David's phone vibrated, and upon glancing at the name displayed, his heart raced with anticipation. Nathan reached out with a straightforward question. Are you available to grab coffee? David acted without a moment's pause. He responded in mere seconds, without a doubt. At what time and in which location? They decided to rendezvous at a cafe in Brooklyn, a spot Nathan claimed was among his favorites. It was a quaint little establishment on Court Street, tucked away between aged brick structures, the sort of venue where the barista recognized each patron by name. David arrived early, his heart racing with excitement. This was an opportunity, perhaps the first genuine one, to create something meaningful alongside his son. As Nathan entered the room, David couldn't help but observe the striking resemblance he bore to Elena. It wasn't merely the manner in which he held himself. It was in the angle of his head and the way his eyes glimmered when he was intent. For a brief instant, David struggled to contain the surge of emotions threatening to engulf him. Yet, he swiftly set those emotions aside. Nathan's presence was everything, and that was all that counted. Nathan greeted David warmly and guided him to a cozy cornered table by the window. The location was serene, offering a glimpse of the lively street beyond, where the vibrant energy of Brooklyn's midday rhythm unfolded in the backdrop. Nathan requested a black coffee, reminiscent of how his mother preferred it, and David mirrored his choice. As they settled into their seats, David sensed, for the first time in weeks, that the heavy silence enveloping them began to lift, if only slightly. Nathan started to disrupt the silence, sharing, "I've been reflecting on what you mentioned that evening." David nodded, feeling uncertain about the direction of this dialogue. "Which section?" "So, you're interested in getting to know me better and being a part of my life?" Nathan remarked, lifting his cup to his lips for a taste of his coffee. "I've been a bit inconsiderate about it, haven't I?" David could hardly trust what he was hearing. Nathan offered his apologies. That took him by surprise. "No, you haven't been unkind," David said, his tone steady. "Your honesty has been commendable. I hold that in high regard." Nathan gazed into his cup, his fingers drumming anxiously against the ceramic surface. "I'm uncertain about how to interpret everything that's happening. I've dedicated my entire existence to believing I was the only one experiencing this." "So, you're saying you've been out there all along, experiencing an entirely different existence?" David sensed the gravity of those words settle within him. He had never grasped the weight of his absence on Nathan, but now, as he listened and witnessed the pain in his eyes, he felt the full magnitude of what he had overlooked. "What happened, Nathan, is beyond my control. Yet, I can exist in this moment. If you would permit me." Nathan took his time before replying. He appeared deep in contemplation, his eyes wandering to the street beyond. "I don't know if I can simply forget everything," he said quietly. "I have constructed my existence in your absence. I've come to depend on my own strength, and it's a challenge to open up to others." David grasped the concept. He had constructed his existence on a foundation of accomplishments and possessions, yet none of it held significance in this moment. Nothing could fill the void of the bond he had never formed with his son. "I'm not requesting that you let go of it. I'm seeking an opportunity to become a part of your world, free from obligations, without any anticipations. Simply, the two of us navigating this journey side by side." Nathan locked eyes with him, his expression finally softening. "I'm still quite frustrated about many matters. A narrative of how events unfolded. Yet, I find myself intrigued." "Well, I suppose that's something to consider, isn't it?" David smiled, a wave of unexpected relief washing over him. "That suffices perfectly for my needs." For the next hour, they engaged in conversation. Gradually, the barriers started to crumble. They delved into a myriad of topics, from school to Nathan's aspirations, even reflecting on the peculiarities of their initial encounter. David shared details of his work and life with Nathan, yet he prioritized listening over speaking. He understood that this extended beyond his own concerns. This narrative revolves around Nathan and the moments they had squandered. As they prepared to depart, Nathan caught him off guard. "You know," he said, "perhaps we could revisit this. Let's grab a coffee and have a chat. I'm not sure about being a," but he paused and then suggested, "perhaps we could give it a shot. Taking it one step at a time, isn't that the way to go?" David felt a surge of optimism, and for the first time, he embraced the possibility of hope. It may not have been significant, but it held its own value. It marked the start of something new. Before moving on, please subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to like and share it with your friends. David caught himself glancing at his phone with increasing frequency, anticipating a message that may never arrive. Since their encounter at the cafe, he sensed a transformation in the atmosphere, a new perspective in Nathan's gaze towards him. It wasn't an open door just yet, but at least it had ceased to be locked. Several days went by, and even though Nathan had not made any further contact, David felt it best not to press him. He understood that this would require a great deal of patience, a quality he possessed in abundance in his professional endeavors, but had seldom called upon in his personal affairs. As dusk settled over the city, he found himself in his penthouse, gazing out at the shimmering New York skyline when suddenly, his phone vibrated with a message. He snatched it up swiftly, a flutter of excitement coursing through him at the sight of Nathan's name. The note was straightforward. "Hey, are you occupied?" David replied without delay. "Absolutely not." "Hello there." Nathan paused for a moment before responding. Lost in thought. "Are you available to chat?" David experienced a wave of relief wash over him. "Perhaps, just perhaps, this signifies advancement." "Absolutely. Feel free to reach out at any time." In the next instant, his phone began to ring. David picked up on the first ring. "Hello, Nathan." A moment of quiet lingered on the line, followed by Nathan's deep breath, as if he were weighing the decision to proceed with the conversation. At last, he spoke up. "Thus, I suppose I simply wanted to inquire about something." "Proceed," David remarked, maintaining a calm demeanor. "I was pondering over my mother," Nathan said with a hint of uncertainty. "I remember you shared a glimpse of how you met her, but I haven't had the chance to hear your perspective on it." David sensed a constriction in his chest. After years of attempting to erase the past, he found himself confronted with Nathan on the line, awakening a desire to recall what he had long sought to forget. "Your mother was remarkable," he said, taking his time to select his words with precision. "Our paths crossed during our college days in Boston. She immersed herself in journalism, while I found myself overwhelmed by finance classes. I became so immersed in my professional aspirations that I hardly observed the life unfolding around me. Yet your mother, she ensured that others recognized her presence not through volume, but through the captivating energy she exuded. She had a remarkable ability to enter a room and instantly create a sense of belonging for everyone present." Nathan paused, then replied, "That certainly sounds like her." David's smile held a trace of melancholy beneath its surface. She possessed a unique ability to expand the dimensions of existence, making it feel more vast than it truly was. She had faith in ideas and individuals. She often shared that true success transcended mere financial gain. It was fundamentally about creating an impact. At that time, I was too youthful and too driven by my aspirations to fully grasp her meaning. "What transpired?" Nathan inquired, his tone now gentler. David let out a deep sigh, his fingers raking through his hair. "Immediately following my graduation, I received a job offer in New York. It was all I had ever dreamed of. An opportunity at a leading company, a swift route to achievement. Your mother wished to extend her stay in Boston to complete an internship that truly inspired her. We vowed to make the long-distance relationship succeed, but I was youthful and self-centered. My career takes precedence over all other aspects of my life." Prior to her arrival, Nathan remained silent for a moment, and David began to fret that he had perhaps overstepped his bounds. Yet again, Nathan's voice broke the silence. He confessed that she seldom mentioned you. "I always had an idea of who you were, but she didn't share much about the events that unfolded. I suppose I always thought you simply walked away and never turned around." David forced down the knot in his throat. "I never wanted to part ways with her, Nathan. At that moment, I believed I was making the right choice. I promised myself I would return for her, that once I had established my path, we could resume from where we had paused. However, existence doesn't unfold in that manner. As the moments slipped away, it wasn't until I grasped the extent of my loss that I understood she was truly gone." Nathan exhaled slowly, releasing the tension within him. "Indeed," he murmured softly, "she had vanished." David sensed the gravity of those words. "I feel remorse, Nathan. Each and every day." Another silence lingered between them, yet it felt less charged than before. The silence enveloped them, a profound moment where two souls reached a deep understanding of one another. At last, Nathan found his voice once more. He confessed that he was curious to learn more. "It's more than just her. Concerning you. Concerning all matters." David felt a surge of emotion. He expressed his desire with genuine sincerity. Nathan paused for a moment before continuing, "But it must be according to my conditions. Just take it easy, without any burdens or demands." "Certainly," David consented. "Take your time. I'm here when you are prepared." A brief silence hung in the air before Nathan uttered a remark that took David by surprise. Do you believe she would have wished for us to connect?" David felt a constriction in his throat. "I know she would," he said, his voice heavy with feeling. "Your mother consistently held a strong belief in the power of second chances." Nathan remained silent for a moment, but when he finally found his words, his voice was soft, carrying a hint of contemplation. "Perhaps we could reconvene in the near future, simply to converse." David experienced a surge of optimism, an emotion he had long denied himself. "That sounds lovely," he replied with a gentle smile. As the call concluded, David leaned back, gazing at the twinkling city lights. After a long time, he sensed a change stirring within him. He had devoted so much time evading the shadows of his past, the weight of his errors, yet perhaps, just perhaps, the opportunity to amend his wrongs still lingered on the horizon. Before moving on to the next part, please consider subscribing to our channel, and don't forget to like and share it with your friends. David made his way to the quaint cafe in Brooklyn ahead of schedule, eager for the meeting with Nathan. He selected a table by the window, his hands intertwined as he sought to calm his anxious thoughts. Years had passed since he experienced such a profound sense of anticipation, a blend of hope and anxiety swirling within him. The initial meeting exceeded his expectations, but now the true test lay ahead, demonstrating to Nathan his genuine commitment to being a part of his life. The doorbell rang, and David glanced up to find Nathan entering, his stance a bit rigid, yet his stride was unwavering. That alone provided David with a sense of comfort. Nathan noticed him and approached, taking a seat across from him in silence. "Thanks for coming," David said, his voice measured as he examined his son's expression for any hint of his emotions. Nathan shrugged, thinking it might be worth a conversation. David nodded, choosing to hold back a bit. A waitress approached, and they each placed their order for coffee. A brief pause enveloped them before Nathan broke the stillness with his words. "What is it that you actually do?" The inquiry took David by surprise, yet he embraced it with open arms. "I operate an investment firm. We oversee portfolios, assist in business expansion, and similar endeavors." Nathan wore a subtle smirk. "In essence, you enhance the wealth of the affluent." David let out a soft laugh, savoring the subtle wit. "That's certainly a perspective." Nathan savored a sip of his coffee. "I lack knowledge in the realm of finance. My mother had a passion for writing, and I suppose I inherited that from her. I am pursuing a degree in journalism at NYU. David's eyes grew large with surprise. "Reporting? That's truly remarkable. Your mother would surely beam with pride." Nathan adjusted his position in the chair. "I'm not sure about my skills, but I genuinely enjoy it." David noted that getting into NYU must mean you have some talent. Nathan paused for a moment before confessing, "I actually received a scholarship. My mother always encouraged me to pursue my passions, yet the cost of college was a significant concern. I put in the effort to achieve it." David experienced a sharp twinge of remorse. Despite possessing an abundance of wealth, he found it disheartening that his own son faced challenges in completing his college education. "I had no idea," he murmured, his voice now softer. "Certainly you didn't," Nathan remarked, his tone devoid of anger, merely conveying a straightforward observation. David let out a breath, coming to terms with all that he had overlooked. "I understand that the past is unchangeable, Nathan, but I desire to be included in your future. If you would allow me to." Nathan sat in silence, his gaze fixed on his coffee cup, searching for the elusive answers it seemed to promise. He confessed, "I'm not sure what that looks like." David replied with sincerity, "Neither do I. However, we can work it out. Embrace the freedom of creativity without constraints or demands. Simply one dialogue at a moment." Nathan raised his gaze to meet his, and in that moment, David sensed a shift. For the first time, he felt as though he was perceiving more than just the confines of his surroundings. "All right," Nathan finally replied. "Engage in one dialogue at a moment." David beamed, a comforting sensation enveloping him that he hadn't experienced in ages. They engaged in conversation for more than an hour following that. Concerning the little details, films that captured their interest, the literature Nathan was engrossed in, David's absurd work timetable. The journey was fraught with challenges, and at times, Nathan appeared reluctant, as though he feared the vulnerability that came with lowering his defenses. Yet David remained unfazed. He understood that this would not be straightforward. Connections are not forged overnight. Upon exiting the cafe, Nathan buried his hands deep into the pockets of his jacket. "I ought to take my leave now. I have a paper that needs to be submitted by tomorrow." David acknowledged with a nod. "Absolutely. Perhaps we could consider doing this again in the future?" Nathan paused briefly, then gave a nod of agreement. "Absolutely. That sounds appealing." David felt a surge of joy. Same here. Nathan offered a brief nod before disappearing into the bustling streets of Brooklyn, leaving David standing there, a sensation he hadn't experienced in years washing over him, hope. In the days that ensued, David's thoughts were persistently occupied by Nathan. Their exchange at the cafe exceeded his expectations, yet he understood it was merely the start of a lengthy journey ahead. He was cautious not to exert too much pressure, yet he was equally mindful of the importance of not allowing too much time to elapse between their encounters. He had already lost 20 years of his son's life. He wasn't going to let any more pass him by. After a few days, he decided to send Nathan a message. It was straightforward. I trust your paper turned out well. Feel free to reach out if you're interested in meeting for coffee again. He was not anticipating a quick reply, yet to his astonishment, his phone vibrated just a few minutes afterward. It went well enough. A cup of coffee sounds delightful. How about this weekend? David experienced a wave of relief and swiftly responded with a message. That sounds ideal. Inform me of the time and place. They reconvened at a new cafe in Manhattan, this time nearer to Nathan's campus. Nathan appeared somewhat more at ease this time, yet a hint of caution lingered in his demeanor. Once more, they engaged in conversation about the little things. David inquired about Nathan's classes, and in response, Nathan posed several questions regarding David's work. It may not have been the quintessential father-son bonding experience, yet it held its own significance, and David felt a sense of gratitude for it. As they lingered in the cafe, Nathan paused, uncertainty flickering across his face before he finally inquired, "Why did you and my mom part ways?" It was the initial moment he had inquired about something intimate, something that delved deeper than the superficial, and David understood he needed to be truthful. He let out a deep breath, his fingers combing through his hair. "We were just kids," he confessed. "I encountered her at the beginning of my professional journey. She radiated brilliance, intelligence, fervor, and vitality. However, I became engrossed in my tasks. I continued to assure her that life would ease up, that I would carve out more moments for us, yet it never came to fruition. In the end, her patience wore thin." Nathan paused, a thoughtful expression crossing his face, before he inquired, "Have you ever attempted to locate her?" David felt a constriction in his throat. "I certainly did. Sometime after our separation, it dawned on me just how significant my losses were. However, by that time, she had already relocated to Chicago. I had no idea she was expecting Nathan." He hesitated, the words hanging in the air, uncertain of how to complete his thought. Nathan gazed into his coffee, contemplating this moment. He confessed that she rarely mentioned you. "I was aware of your name, yet she never portrayed you as the villain. Simply, a presence that was absent." David forced down the knot in his throat. "Every day," he murmured, "I feel the weight of that regret. I could have taken further action. I ought to have put up a stronger fight to remain a part of her world. Had I been aware of your existence," he shook his head. "I understand that forgiveness may not come easily, Nathan, but I want you to know that if I had the power to alter what has happened, I certainly would." Nathan gazed at him for an extended moment, then let out a breath. He confessed, "I'm at a loss with all of this." "There's nothing you need to worry about," David remarked. "We approach it gradually, focusing on each step as it comes. Take your time." Nathan gave a slow, deliberate nod. "Understood." They lingered in quietude for a time, yet the stillness held no discomfort. It seemed like advancement. As they exited the cafe, David strolled alongside Nathan for a few blocks before they went their separate ways. Just as Nathan was about to leave, he paused and then remarked, "Hey, I appreciate you getting in touch." David beamed. "I appreciate the opportunity you've provided me." As he observed Nathan blend into the throng, David sensed a change stirring within him. After years of stagnation, he finally sensed a shift, a movement towards the future rather than being anchored in the past. Though the journey ahead was still daunting, he found solace in the fact that he no longer traversed that path in solitude. Before we proceed, kindly subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to like and share it with your friends. David struggled to recall the last occasion he experienced such anxiety over anything besides his job. In recent weeks, he and Nathan had encountered each other several more times, with each encounter becoming slightly less strained and increasingly effortless. They weren't quite there yet, but at least the barrier Nathan had constructed was starting to show signs of weakness. Today, however, felt distinct. Today, David extended an invitation to Nathan to visit his home for the very first time. It wasn't an extravagant invitation, merely dinner, something straightforward, yet it carried a weight of significance. He devoted the whole day to preparation, ensuring that every detail was flawless. Though he lacked culinary skills, he had taken the initiative to hire a chef for the evening, aiming to impress without crossing into the realm of excess. As the doorbell chimed, he inhaled deeply, gathering his thoughts before he turned the handle. Nathan stood there, a hint of discomfort flickering across his face, yet he remained resolute, unwilling to retreat. He donned a relaxed hoodie and jeans, a sharp juxtaposition to David's neatly pressed shirt and slacks, yet David remained unfazed. He felt a deep sense of gratitude that Nathan had arrived. "Hey," David said, moving aside to allow him entry. Nathan stepped inside, his eyes sweeping over the sleek, contemporary design of the penthouse that offered a stunning view of Central Park, all while exuding a cozy charm. "This place is nice," he said, and David could sense the unspoken sentiment. "This place is enormous." David beamed. "Thank you. Feel free to settle in comfortably." Nathan ventured deeper, his gaze sweeping over the artwork adorning the walls, the luxurious furnishings, and the gleaming floors beneath his feet. "So this is what investment firms offer, huh?" He pondered, a subtle smirk playing on his lips. David let out a soft laugh. "Perhaps something along those lines. Yet, truthfully, none of this holds any significance without someone to share it alongside." He hadn't intended for the remark to carry weight, yet Nathan appeared to sense it regardless. "Well, you've got me here now," Nathan remarked, his tone playful, yet his words carrying weight. David felt a subtle constriction in his chest. "I certainly do." They transitioned to the dining room, where the table awaited, adorned with an exquisite arrangement of food. Nathan arched an eyebrow. "Did you create all of this?" David chuckled heartily. "I long for that." Assistance was provided. Nathan wore a sly grin. "Statistics." As they dined, the dialogue unfolded with a fluidity that surprised David. Conversations flowed around Nathan's classes, his cherished books, and his aspirations post-graduation. David recounted tales from his college days, anecdotes that brought laughter to Nathan, each one feeling like a little triumph. As dessert came to a close, Nathan reclined in his chair, casting a serious gaze at David. "What do we do next?" he inquired. David placed his fork on the table, fully understanding Nathan's implication. "It's your choice," he said with sincerity. "I respect your readiness and won't pressure you into anything you're not comfortable with." Nathan gave a slight nod, his gaze fixed on his plate for a brief moment before he lifted his eyes. "I'm unsure about navigating this whole father-son dynamic. I've never truly had a father figure in my life. It was only my mother and I." David forced down the tightness in his throat. "There's no need to hurry with anything. We can simply exist in each other's lives in whatever manner feels appropriate." Nathan let out a breath. "I believe that would be enjoyable." David smiled, a wave of relief enveloping him. "Same here." Nathan surveyed the apartment once more. "I often found myself pondering the essence of my father's character. If he were merely a slacker, or if he simply lacked concern." He cast a glance over his shoulder at David. "However, you don't quite match my expectations." David paused, uncertainty flickering in his mind. "What were your expectations?" Nathan wore a sly grin. "An elderly, affluent gentleman lacking in charisma." David chuckled heartily. "Indeed, I possess considerable wealth, yet I like to believe I also have a touch of character." Nathan let out a soft laugh. "Indeed, you seem to be doing well." It may not have been a sweeping proclamation of affection, yet it held its own significance. At this moment, that was more than sufficient. Before moving on to the next segment, kindly subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to like and share it with your friends. David discovered he was settling into a fresh cadence in his existence, a scenario that involved Nathan in ways he had never envisioned just months prior. Their gatherings had intensified, transforming from sporadic coffee dates to dinners, strolls through Central Park, and even a handful of Knicks games. With every exchange, the unseen wall that had separated them began to crumble, and though traces of uncertainty lingered, David sensed their connection deepening. It was an unusual sensation, embracing fatherhood at such a late stage, yet he treasured each moment shared with Nathan. Still, a persistent unease haunted him, a concern that a single misstep could cause Nathan to withdraw once more. He preferred to tread lightly, avoiding any pressure or excessive demands, allowing Nathan to set the rhythm of their interactions. One evening, While they lingered in a cozy diner close to Nathan's campus, he introduced an unexpected topic. He mentioned that he had been contemplating a trip to Chicago, absent-mindedly stirring his milkshake. David lifted his gaze from the food before him. Is there a specific reason for that? Nathan paused briefly, letting out a sigh. I wish to pay a visit to my mother's resting place. His voice maintained a calmness, yet an unspoken tension lingered beneath the surface. I haven't gone back since the funeral. I truly believe that the moment has arrived. David experienced a wave of melancholy at the thought of Olivia. He had devoted so much effort to creating something with Nathan that he hadn't paused to consider how deeply his son might still be mourning. That's a wonderful idea, David remarked softly. If you'd like, I can accompany you. Nathan shot him a surprised look. Would you really consider that? David gave a slight nod. Absolutely. If you prefer to venture out on your own, I completely understand. However, if you desire some companionship, I would be truly honored to accompany you. Nathan paused, a brief silence enveloping him, before he offered a slight nod. Absolutely, that sounds appealing. A few days later, they took a flight to Chicago, a city rich with history for Nathan, yet almost devoid of significance for David. The flight passed in silence, each of them absorbed in their own reflections. Upon their arrival, Nathan led David to the cemetery where Olivia lay at rest. The air was sharp, the sky a blanket of gray as they strolled among the lines of gravestones until they arrived at hers. Nathan lingered before the grave, his hands tucked into his pockets, gazing at the etched letters of his mother's name. Hey, Mom, he said softly, his voice just a breath above silence. David took a step back, allowing Nathan a brief moment of solitude. He observed his son kneeling, gently running his fingers along the inscription. I'm managing well, Nathan replied gently. I appreciate your concern for me, but I'm working through everything. College offers valuable experiences. I've formed a few connections. I encountered my father. His voice trembled just a bit. Initially, I was uncertain about my feelings, but he turned out to be different from my expectations. He's making an effort, Mom. I believe you would be fine with that. David felt a tightness in his chest at those words. He had endured the weight of guilt for far too long, burdened by the absence in Olivia's life, the ignorance of Nathan's existence, and the countless moments he had let slip away. Listening to Nathan express that Olivia would have accepted his presence in her life felt like a subtle glimpse of redemption. Nathan rose after some time, releasing a deep breath. He glanced at David, his demeanor gentler than it had been previously. I appreciate you joining me on this journey. David rested a hand on his shoulder. Without fail, they departed from the cemetery quietly, yet the stillness held a certain ease. The silence enveloped them, rich with unspoken words, a shared understanding flowing effortlessly between them. As they settled into the car, Nathan glanced at David, a subtle smile playing on his lips. Are you feeling hungry? There's a pizza spot my mom used to bring me to when I was little. Unmatched deep dish in the city. David smiled broadly. That sounds absolutely ideal. As they navigated the bustling streets of Chicago, an unmistakable sense of change lingered in the air. It wasn't merely the city or the moment, it was the essence of their connection. The barriers that once loomed large between them had crumbled, and for the first time, David sensed the genuine presence of his son in his life. David could never have foreseen the unexpected twist that life had in store for him. The journey from a self-made millionaire, convinced he possessed all he could desire, to the shocking discovery of a son he never knew existed, had turned the last few months into a tumultuous emotional ride. As he sat in his office, gazing out at the New York skyline, a sense of contentment washed over him, an emotion he hadn't experienced in years. Nathan had woven himself into the fabric of his life, and despite their tumultuous beginning, they had crafted something genuine. It transcended merely compensating for the past. It became a journey of progressing together. The journey to Chicago transformed the dynamics between them, strengthening their bond in an unforeseen manner. David had feared that returning to Olivia's grave would stir up painful memories, yet it ultimately provided them both with a sense of resolution. Nathan had finally permitted himself to release some of the burdens he had been shouldering, and in that act of liberation, he had created space for David in his life. Nathan had recently wrapped up his semester, and David had extended an invitation for dinner at his apartment in Manhattan. A new tradition had taken root. Nathan would arrive, and they would embark on a culinary adventure, or at least try to, given their limited kitchen prowess. Their conversations would meander through topics ranging from sports to business, eventually landing on Nathan's aspirations for the future. That evening, as Nathan diced vegetables and David simmered a pot of pasta sauce, Nathan abruptly faced him with a grave look. He paused for a moment, deep in thought. "I am eager to secure an internship at your company this summer." David was caught off guard. "Is that so?" he inquired, making an effort to suppress the thrill in his tone. He had been wishing for Nathan to show some curiosity about his business, yet he was reluctant to pressure him into any decisions. Nathan gave a slight nod. "Absolutely. I'm pursuing a degree in business, and gaining practical experience is essential. Additionally, I'm eager to observe your process in detail." David placed the spoon aside and turned his gaze toward his son. "I believe that's an excellent suggestion, but to be clear, you'll need to put in the same effort as everyone else. No preferential treatment." Nathan wore a sly grin. "I wouldn't anticipate anything different." That evening's meal had an unusual quality to it. They felt a sense of relief, as if they had finally arrived at a moment where their relationship was no longer burdened by the weight of the past. They shared laughter and stories, and for the first time, David sensed that he wasn't merely compensating for lost moments. He was genuinely embracing his role as a father. Several weeks later, Nathan embarked on his internship at David's company. Initially, a few employees murmured about the CEO's son being part of their team, but Nathan swiftly demonstrated that he was not merely present for show. He arrived ahead of time, lingered until the end, and posed insightful questions. He sought to absorb knowledge not only from David but from all those in his vicinity. David was filled with immense pride. As the sun dipped below the horizon, signaling the end of a long day at the office, Nathan approached David's door and knocked softly. "Do you have a moment to spare?" he inquired. David gestured for him to take a seat. "What are you thinking about?" Nathan paused briefly before he found his words. "I understand that events unfolded differently than we had anticipated in our relationship. I spent my childhood believing I was without a father, and then, out of nowhere, you appeared. Initially, I held a grudge against it. I held a grudge against you. However, at this moment, I'm thrilled to have discovered you." He halted, inhaling deeply. "Perhaps I'm thankful that you discovered me." David sensed a constriction in his throat. He had devoted countless hours to feeling remorseful for his absence during Nathan's formative years, yet those words illuminated the truth. The present was what truly held significance. "I'm glad as well," he replied, his voice unwavering. "I might have overlooked the initial 18 years, but I'm present now, and I'm here to stay." Nathan offered a faint smile. "Excellent. I believe I may genuinely enjoy your company." David let out a soft laugh. What a comforting thought. That summer marked the pinnacle of David's existence. They collaborated closely, enjoyed weekends immersed in baseball games, and even embarked on a spontaneous trip to California just for the thrill of it. Nathan had transformed from an unfamiliar face into a cherished member of the family, and for the first time in ages, David sensed that his life was whole. Years later, when Nathan graduated and officially became a full-time member of David's company, David realized he had not only welcomed a son but also secured a lasting legacy. Nathan represented more than mere lineage. He embodied the pinnacle of his endeavors, a testament to the notion that life can surprise you with unexpected opportunities for redemption. This time, David was resolute in his commitment to seize every moment without hesitation.